wet misery means a 130-kilometer raid on a medium mountain stage. This is Volta Catalunya stage 6, the second last stage before the Barcelona circuit stage. We have Almeida in the leader's jersey, Higuita's on 7, Carapaz is on 27 seconds in ninth. They do the first and only really major climb of the day, the Col de les Liebres Musara, 10Ks, 5.5%, 6%. Not even that steep. It's rainy conditions. He's got the golden bike. You know who likes rainy conditions? The man from Ecuador, where it's always raining, Richard Carapaz. Almeida and UAE with Ayuso close on GC and Almeida in the leader's jersey. They had a pretty good team on paper to defend his jersey. I mean, Ineos are down a fair few riders, but the real shame of today is we didn't see most of the action. Apparently, Lucas Plapp on Ineos on that climb went absolutely ham. Just launched it on that climb, dropped everybody except Higuita and Carapaz, and he drove it to the top with those two on his wheel, giving them a 1-minute lead on Almeida. When live coverage started, 80Ks to go, we see a 3-minute lead for Higuita and Carapaz. They've already been solo for 50 kilometers with UAE pacing not very fast for Joao Almeida. They've got Costa and Marc Soler. None of the other GC teams are helping them. Quintana and Arkea letting them burn. Ineos with Rodriguez and Castro, an unfortunate shadow behind that UAE rider all day. And Higuita, he was incredible on the descents today. He waited for Carapaz. He had to wait. Like, we have another 2 hours of racing from this point. 2 GC guys attacking with 130K. I still can't believe it. He waited for Carapaz. They worked pretty much seamlessly together throughout the rest of this up and down terrain. And on the descents, UAE would put 15, 20 seconds into them. But on the climbs, we basically have Soler and Costa against Higuita and Carapaz. Those two duos riding at their threshold against each other. And the UAE guys are always going to come off worse in that scenario. Higuita stuffing a newspaper under his gilet. It was cold conditions. And with 48Ks to go, over an hour left, Soler's done. Goes back to the car, and it's just Rui Costa left. The gap is 3 minutes and 20 seconds with just Costa left. He's never closing that down. He's already been working for over an hour, particularly when Higuita's still pushing it on the descent. Luckily for UAE at this point, they got a little bit of assistance from other teams. UNOX started pacing, not really sure why. This wasn't the last climb, so they weren't really setting up Johannesson. Don't know why they were, but that did start to make a big dent into these two. No matter how strong two guys are, unless maybe you're Pogacar, if you have the group working behind, if you've been out the front for 100Ks, you'll be in trouble. And they were in more trouble if Bike Exchange got Caden Groves, their sprinter, over that final climb, because they will pace the descent and false flat descent to the finish. Then Bahrain started pacing with the Herminator, Pernsteiner on the front. That gap's now under 2 minutes. So they've taken time out on the climb with the descent to come. Then Ayuso comes to the front. Haven't seen him all day. 5th on provisional virtual GC. He drops Bike Exchange at the end of the last climb with a 146 gap to Higuita and Carapaz. He's got Almeida on his wheel over the top. He's off the wheel when they start the descent. So it's hard to ascribe blame. I think it's largely Almeida is a bad descender in the wet. Like, you see Ayuso giving him the Danny Martinez, Egan Bernal stage 19 Giro treatment, saying, get onto my wheel. And the very next corner, he's letting the wheel go through the corner. So maybe it's on Ayuso for pushing too hard. That being said, if they go really easy on this descent with the Higuita going full, they're never going to catch these guys. So at that point, Almeida's just got to hold the wheel on the descent. But his stuff goes from a great stage to the stuff of legends. Ayuso, the teammate of race leader Joao Almeida, attacks on the descent with poles and Quintana and turns just behind him. Now, at this point, there was a slender chance I didn't believe it, but a slender chance this was a 5,000 IQ galaxy brain move because there was one bonus second available at the bottom of this descent because Carapaz and Higuita had taken 3 and 2, and Almeida is only 1 second ahead of Quintana. So with Almeida being dropped on the descent or looking in big trouble on the descent, maybe Ayuso thought, I'll go ahead, or the team told him to go ahead to take away this second from Quintana to protect Almeida's GC. The problem with that theory you're about to see is that your man keeps on trucking. Juan Ayuso in the valley with Quintana, C-Rod, turns, and I think Poles, or maybe Van Dannebiel just behind chasing. So they were about 15 seconds. Unbelievable descent from Ayuso. Like, he was absolutely flying. Looks like a great descender, but I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if his radio wasn't working. He was asking for a time check. Maybe he thought he could bridge to Higuita and Carapaz and then realized I can't close a minute 15 gap on the descent. It was only a minute 11 with 15 Ks to go, but they would never catch them because it took so long for that group to catch back to Ayuso, who was fixing his radio on the fly. The Quintana Poles group caught him, with this being Group 3. Bike Exchange, UAE, and Israel pacing for Almeida and their two sprinters, respectively. But this all worked into the favor of Higuita and Carapaz, who were still looking good. They go on long rides in wet, cold conditions back home. Quintana pacing in the group behind, trying to gain time on Almeida, and they seem to fuel perfectly, finishing strong. And with the gap at a minute 23 to the peloton, to Almeida, Carapaz starts to play a few little games. He starts to think, okay, how much of a gap do I have? I'm 27 seconds behind Almeida. It's at a minute. And when this group is caught, the Quintana group by Bike Exchange, the emphasis comes out of the chase again. And so into the final 200 meters, Carapaz sitting on Higuita 130 kilometers together all day, and it would come down to a sprint. There are no gifts in this life. Carapaz knows that. El Jaguar de Tulcan pounces on Higuita, takes the stage. Higuita takes a big GC lead. It would be his biggest ever win if he can hold on tomorrow. And Carapaz reminds us, Etoile de Bessèges, it don't matter. It's about that Giro tune-up. Groves, incredible performance from him actually getting over those climbs, coming third ahead of Velasco Pache. But yeah, 48-second gap, UAE could have closed that. If they operated differently, no way Carapaz and Higuita could have stayed out in front. At least it wouldn't have been 48 seconds. We've seen problems all week. I mentioned this in an earlier video. La Molina wasn't good. Boitol wasn't good. The two mount stages, and today was a complete disaster. Higuita taking the GC lead, 16 seconds ahead of Carapaz, 52 seconds ahead of Almeida. One of the most memorable raids I've ever seen. Barcelona, Montjuic Castle circuit stage tomorrow. Hopefully it's just as exciting then. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like it down below if you did, and I'll see you with the recap tomorrow. Ciao.